run around, scrape your knees, climb trees, hop fences, get into trouble, for crying out loud.
The legend of the beast goes back a long time.
Something got the ball. What was that thing?
Whatever goes over that fence stays there. I think we've seriously underestimated the beast. Obviously, we're dealing with the superior intelligence.
Benny, wait. You don't have to do this.
Yeah, I do, Smalls. I have to do this.
Hey, good morning, everyone. If we haven't had a chance to meet yet, my name's Garry. I'm one of the pastors here. So glad that you decided to spend some of your day with us today. Just before we jump in, I just want to say thank you. This past month, we had our initiative called Blanket Nanaimo, where we were collecting items such as socks, toques, blankets, sleeping bags, and collecting those and getting them down to some organizations in town that then distribute those items to those that find themselves living on the street this time of year when it's really cold. And as of yesterday, you guys had donated over 320 items. And you still have today, if you've got something and you're like, oh yeah, I forgot about that, you can still drop those off. Just go to our website. You'll see Blanket Nanaimo. You can drop them off at the address that's there. But thank you again. You guys are absolutely amazing how you guys just step up to the plate. And speaking of stepping up to the plate, I don't know if you've seen the movie that trailer was for. It's called The Sandlot. Came out in 1993. It's the story about a group of preteens growing up in 1960s Los Angeles. And to while away their summer days, they play baseball in this lot, this sandlot, this run-down, dilapidated baseball diamond that's located in their neighborhood. And the basic storyline centers around this boy named Scotty Smalls, who is later called Smalls by all his buddies. He's new to town, moved there with his mom and his stepdad, and not making many friends, and his mom is urging him, go make some friends, go do something. And one day he gets invited by one of the neighborhood kids to come and play baseball. And he reluctantly agrees because, well, he's not athletic and he knows nothing about baseball. He knows nothing at all. But he said, I want to make some friends, so he goes, okay, I'll come. And so he shows up, and it becomes apparent pretty quickly that he's got like zero skills, can't catch a ball, can't hit a ball, anything, so he gets made fun of. But over time, friendships start to develop. Well, one day they're out playing, and this kid named Ham, he's like the power hitter, he steps up and he just leans into this pitch and smacks the ball and literally rips the stuffing out of it. The stitching comes off, the leather covering goes one way and the guts go the other, and now they're like, well, I guess that's it. That was our only ball. We have no money, so I guess the game's over. It's literally over. And that's when Small says, hey guys, I've got a ball. I got a baseball. And they're like, what? Well, go get it. So he runs home and he goes to his stepdad's den and grabs a baseball. And he comes back, says, I got it. And he throws it to the captain of the team, the pitcher. And the pitcher says, okay, well, your ball, you're first at bat. And of course, he whiffs on the first one, and they all laugh at him. But then in typical Hollywood style, everything slows down, and the pitch comes in slow. And Smalls just, with everything he's got, he just leans into this to bat this thing. And he nails this ball and knocks it literally out of the sandlot, out of the park, and into the yard of the beast. There was a legend going around that the kids had, kind of garnered up in their head that there was this really mean, grumpy man that lived in this house whose, his fence bordered the outfield of this field, this ball field. And on the other side lived him and his really mean, vicious dog called the Beast. And legend had it that if so many people had gone missing that had ventured into the yard because the Beast had either eaten them or buried them. And so they thought any ball that went over that fence was gone forever. It belonged to the Beast. Well, Smalls says, guys, I need to get that ball back. And they're like, it's gone, dude. Like, there's nothing you can do. Like, if you go back there, the beast will get you, and that'll be it. You'll be dead. It's the beast's ball. And he says, no, you don't understand. I got to get that ball back. It's my stepdad's ball, and it's a special ball. And they're like, well, why is it special? And he goes, well, some woman signed it. Some woman named Baby Ruth. And they're like, that's not a woman. That's like the best baseball player to have ever lived. You're dead either way, because if you don't get the ball, your dad's going to kill you. And if you do get the ball, the beast is going to get you. And that sets up the entire storyline, the rest of the movie, is these guys trying their best to get themselves out of this impossible situation. You ever been there? Have you ever faced an impossible situation? Maybe you're facing one right now. Something that you can't see any way through, around, over, under. It's just whatever it happens to be for you, it's right there, and you can't see a way to solve it, resolve it, anything. And it's an impossible situation. It's not much fun, is it? Hey, it's great, you know, you watch this show and, hilarity ensues as these kids try and retrieve this ball. But when it's an impossible situation that's in your life, it's not so funny. I don't know about you. I found myself there, and here's how I generally react. I'm trying to get better at this, but I'm still working on it. But when I'm facing an impossible situation, I usually get grumpy, I get snappy, and I get frustrated, and here's why. When I'm facing an impossible situation, I feel helpless and hopeless. You know, just think of, if you have kids and they get sick or they hurt themselves and you want to help them, but you can't. What happens? We get frustrated with them, right? It's like, why are you sick anyways? That kind of thing. And that's what happened. By nature, I'm a fixer. I think we all are. And we want to fix things, and when we can't, we get so frustrated because we feel helpless and hopeless. The other thing I do when I find myself facing that impossible situation is I start asking the why question. Why me? Why now? Because impossible situations, I don't know if you've noticed this, but they don't come at a very good time. They always come at a most inopportune time. They're like an interruption. When's the last time you woke up and said, don't really have much going on today. It'd be an awesome day for an impossible situation to come my way. Doesn't happen. They always come as an interruption. Right? And so I ask myself, why? Why now? And take it one step further. This gets really kind of murky and complicated when we're doing our best to follow God and stuff like this happens. Then the question shifts to, hey, God, why? Why is this happening? Why do I find myself in this situation? What's going on? I'm trying to do my best to follow you. This doesn't make any sense. And I got to admit, it does seem weird that God would allow us to face impossible situations when we're trying to follow him. But if you followed him for any length of time, it's true. Jesus himself said, in this world you will have trouble. But we're going to look at a story today that shows that, we may face these impossible situations, but there is a way through it. And in this story, we're also going to see the why these situations tend to come our way. This story, it's an incredible story. So incredible, in fact, that it's the only one, other than the Easter story, that shows up in all four first books of the New Testament, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Other than the Easter story, no other story is repeated, maybe 2 or 3 times by the different writers. This is the only other one that's in all 4. And today we're going to look at this story as recorded by arguably Jesus' best friend, a guy named John, because John's sole purpose of the letter he wrote to some first century Christians that we get to look at, 2,000 years later, was to help them see who Jesus was. He wasn't so much worried about what Jesus did, these miracles he pulled off, and we're going to look at one today, but who was behind the miracle and what it revealed about him. And so here we go. And before we jump in, I want to throw a challenge out to you. I want you to think of an impossible situation that maybe you're in right now. It could be a small one, could be a big one, but that impossible situation. Or maybe one that you've just gone through. And what I want you to do is just keep that in the forefront of your mind. And then as we venture through this story and kind of mine out some principles, overlay those principles onto your own life. Okay? So here we go. Here's what John wrote. He says, after this, and what he's referring to when he says after this is Jesus and his closest followers, disciples, had just been out all day teaching, healing people. Jesus himself had just found out that his cousin, a guy named John the Baptist, talked about him back in January, the guy that baptized Jesus, just was killed in prison. And so all of these guys, Jesus and all his followers, I mean, they're tired. It's after a long day. And they just want to go be by themselves, relax, chill out, kind of just have a nice evening. And this is what happened. It says, after this, Jesus crossed to the far shore of the Sea of Galilee. Listen to this. A great crowd of people followed him because they saw the signs he had performed by healing the sick. And so they're trying to get away, and this crowd keeps following him. So they went up a mountainside, and Jesus sat down with his disciples. And maybe they're all thinking, oh, they won't follow us up here. We'll be fine. Jesus looked up and saw a great crowd coming toward him. Talk about interruptions. These guys just want to chill out for the night. Now they got this to deal with. Jesus turns to one of his close followers, a guy named Philip, and says, where shall we buy bread for all these people to eat? Philip's probably thinking, why don't you just send them off? Why do we have to feed them? And then he says this. Philip answered him, it would take more than a half a year's wages to buy enough bread for each one to have just a bite. Really interesting how Philip responds to Jesus' question. Jesus asks where. Philip answers with how much. Right away, Philip begins to figure out how to solve the problem, this situation that they're facing, based on his ability and the resources that he may or may not have on hand. In this case, it's money, which they have very little, if any. Remember, they're missionaries. They're kind of living off people just donating stuff to them. So Philip's like, well, this is impossible, and here's why. We have no money and to buy bread, and what you're asking us to do, Jesus, is impossible. Can't be done. We can't do this. You know what's jumped out for me in this is this little takeaway. And I'll just throw this out there you to think about. You can agree, disagree, but just for you to consider. I think what we can learn from this interaction here is this. I think this is what Jesus was teaching them, and we can learn from today is don't assume a problem or a challenge is impossible based solely on your abilities or your resources. Don't assume a problem or a challenge is impossible based solely on your abilities or your resources. Easier said than done, right? I struggle with this all the time. Experts suggest that among the giftings and callings of people, like nurses, teachers, firemen, doctors, people that feel called into profession, 3% of those people are called to be pastors. It's kind of a rough estimate. Which is to say, being a pastor isn't just a job, it's a calling. It's an actual calling. And I sensed that call early on in my life. I was probably about the same age as the kids that were in this movie, The Sandlot, 12, 13 years old. But here's the thing. I kind of ignored God's invitation to kind of follow him a little closer because I'll just be honest. I was having a good time. I was going into my teens. Life was good. I didn't have time for that. And so I just kind of went and did my own thing. But I always felt this nudge, this reminder, like, hey, I've got something for you. And I just kind of blow it off, go do my own thing. Well, eventually I got to the place where, I felt that nudge enough that I was working part-time as a pastor, part-time as a fisherman. And things were going along fine, but then one year, I sensed God saying, I want you to do this full time. I want you to let go of that thing, that fishing thing, and just follow me. I want you to lean into this, step into this. And so what did I do? Exactly what Philip did. I started calculating the cost. And the long and short of it was, it didn't take me long to go, there is no way this is going to happen. Not a chance, and here's why. I had a mortgage, car loans, I had kids in braces, all that stuff that life, they were in sports and all kinds of activities. I'm just looking going, there's no way we can swing this. Not a chance. The only way we could do it is if we were to sell our house, downsize, and kind of pay off as much debt as we could. Now, the house we had was in a great location. We lucked out. We were early in the market, and we ended up getting a house on Brannan Lake. So we had beachfront right out our back. It was beautiful. It was awesome. Loved it. But in order to sell, it was an older home. It needed a bunch of upgrades and repairs. And so I started looking at those, and I started adding up the time and the money, and I'm thinking, oh, man, this is just like, there's no way. Every time I think about this, just more things get in the way. And so I had pretty much given up any hope of making the transition from fisherman into full-time pastor. It was just like, it's not happening. We had let our neighbors know that we were kind of thinking of selling because they had indicated that, hey, if you're ever going to sell, let us know. And they said, oh, man, yeah, we don't know anyone that's really looking right now. But, good luck. Hopefully you don't move because we really like you guys and all this type of stuff. And I remember one day I was in my office and I just said, oh, God, I hear it. I really sense you calling me into this, but I just do not see how this is going to happen. Just don't see it. You're going to have to do something pretty amazing here. Okay, we hadn't listed our house or anything. So imagine our surprise when one day we came home and there was a note hanging on our front door. And so my wife took it off and she's reading and she kind of chuckled and she goes, hey, take a look at this. She hands me this note and it says, hi, we understand you might be interested in selling your house. We're in Nanaimo until tonight. Give us a call and we'd like to come and see your house. And so my wife says, what do you think? And I said, can't hurt. So we phoned and these people show up and they're from Vancouver. And we took them on the 50-cent tour. Here's the bathroom, and here's the bedrooms, and here's the basement, and blah, blah, blah. It took about 5 minutes. We ended up back in the kitchen, and that's when the guy looked at me and he said, so, are you interested in selling? And if so, how much? And my wife and I are standing there going, we had talked about prices, but it was all market prices after we'd done all these repairs, because there were some repairs that needed to be done. And so we said, yeah, we're thinking of selling. We would sell. And he says, how much? And so I threw the price out, and I was going to start telling him, but, we'd fix this. And before I could even say, he says, we'll buy it. Cash. Done deal. And he starts writing a check for $20,000 saying, non-refundable. And I'm like, I'm standing there like, woof. Then he pulls out like a blank piece of paper, and he writes up this sales agreement with his name on it, my name on it. He signs it, I sign it. And he says, okay, we got to go get the ferry. My lawyer will be in touch with you. And off he goes. My wife goes, did that just happen? And I said, it did. And she goes, do you think it's legit? And I was like, well, I don't know how this sales agreement, how legal it is. And he could always stop payment on the check. So I don't know. Next morning, we get a phone call from the guy's lawyer. I'm going to be faxing over all the documents, sign it, blah, blah, blah. 15 minutes, we had sold our house. 15 minutes. And here I am. Jesus loves the impossible. He really does. He loves the impossible. So don't assume a problem or a challenge is impossible based on your abilities or resources. Because if you do, you will miss out on what you were ultimately created for, an adventure of a lifetime. Doesn't mean life's going to be easy, but it's an adventure with God right at your side. But oftentimes what we do is we hang on to the life we have and don't grab onto the one he's offering. Then Andrew, Simon, Peter's brother, spoke up. And I love this. He says, There's a young boy here with 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. Andrew seems so open-minded to this. It's like, basically what he's saying is like, we don't have much, Jesus, but here, this is what we do have. And had he stopped there, oh, if Andrew had stopped there, he would have made arguably the biggest statement of faith in the entire Bible. But he goes one sentence too far, and he said, but what good is that with this huge crowd? He was so close. It's kind of like watching the Canucks lately, right? There's a bit of hope, but then there's the third period. And it's like, oh. But we tend to do the same thing, don't we? And just like Andrew, when we're dwarfed by the size of this impossible situation that we find ourselves in, we assume the problem is not only just too big for us, but it's too big for God. And so we don't even ask him for help. We just go, well, I guess that's not going to happen, and on we go. You know, Andrew and Philip, they approached the same problem, the same situation from different angles, and they came up with the same conclusion, which was wrong. Philip looked at the problem and said, you know, Jesus, what you've asked us costs too much. Andrew looked at it and said, Jesus, what you've asked, we don't have enough for. Can you feel this story stepping off the pages of history and into your story? Your circumstance, your problem, your impossible situation. I don't know if you've ever said this before. I know I have. When I blank, then I'll blank. You ever said that? We use it as a delay tactic. It sounds really good, but it's really what it is a delay tactic. When I get this, then I'll do that. So it's this future thing. We don't want to do it right now. Not quite ready. So when I get this, then I'll do that. It shows up all the, you know, like if you want to get in shape. And it says, when I have more time, then I'll go to the gym. Right? Here's the thing with this. It's been true for me anyway. When I sense God asking me to do something, when I'm thinking, you know, I should go talk to that person or do this or do that, oftentimes I do the same thing. I will, when, then I'll, you know, do what you're asking. Maybe for you it's in the area of finances and generosity. You're sensing God just, you know, saying, be a little more generous. Trust me. I'm there with you. Just be a little more generous. And what do we say? Well, when I get more money, then I'll be more generous. Here's the thing. It sounds great, and it sounds logical. You know, the more I have, the more I can give away. But actually, the opposite is generally true. The more we have, the more we hang on to it. Author and motivational speaker, a guy named Robert Kiyosaki, put it this way. He said, more money just magnifies who you already are. If you were generous before you had money, that will continue. But if you aren't, money will not change that. You can see this principle play out on that mountainside way back 2,000 years ago with this little boy who was willing to give up his lunch. I don't know if you noticed it, but Andrew said there's a young boy here with 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. Andrew mentions that the bread is made of barley. So what's that about? Well, in that culture, bread was made from 2 things, wheat and barley. Rich people ate bread made from wheat. Poor people ate bread made from barley. And what Andrew's revealing there is that this boy wasn't just going to give up his lunch and then, because he had the option to go home and eat more. That could have been it. That could have been his weekly meal right there. And he's willing to trust God with it and give it away. When then I'll. Maybe that's showing up in your marriage. You know, you're like, God, it's getting so hard. I know you have asked me to love my wife as Jesus loved the church, sacrificially, putting her needs before mine. But you know what? It is so hard because she's not respecting me, and I don't have what it takes. I don't have anything left in the tank. I have too little. Or a wife saying, God, I know you want me to love and respect my husband, but I can't because he doesn't respect me. I have tried. I have nothing left. When then I'll. When I have more time, I'll start or I'll finish that project. When I get caught up work, then I'll spend more time with my family, my kids, my wife. When they stop being mean and stubborn, then I will consider forgiving them. Welcome to the story. There is nothing like the experience of when God shows up in your impossible situation and provides a way through. But that can only happen when we allow God to show up in that impossible situation and ask him for help. Tell everyone to sit down, Jesus said. And when Jesus says sit down, he's not saying, sit on your butts and cross your legs. He's actually, the Greek phrasing there is to lounge, because that's how they ate. On an arm, laying down, a little table in front of them. What Jesus is saying is get ready to eat. You're not having a snack here. Get ready to eat. And so they all sat down on the grassy slopes, and the men alone numbered 5,000. Now we know there's little kids there because this boy had offered his lunch. There's probably women there. Some scholars say there was probably 10 to 15,000 people on this hill. And it says, then Jesus took the loaves and gave thanks to God. I know how I would have prayed that. It's like, yeah, thanks, God. This is great. Awesome. Right? But Jesus, look at what happens. He prays for it. He gives thanks for it. And they all ate as much as they wanted. Get ready to eat. And after everyone was full, Jesus told his disciples, now gather the leftovers so that nothing is wasted. So they picked up the pieces and filled 12 baskets. 12 disciples, 12 baskets, 12 doggy bags. It's going to come into play next week. So make sure you come back. But they picked up the pieces and filled 12 baskets with scraps left by the people who had eaten from the 5 barley loaves. That's incredible. Don't assume a problem or a challenge is impossible based solely on your abilities or your resources. It's really interesting. If you haven't seen The Sandlot by now, wow, this is a spoiler alert, and you're probably never going to see it. It came out in 93, right? So here's how it ends. A guy named Benny, he's Small's best friend, finally says, I'm going to go into the beast yard and I'm going to get the ball. And they're all like, no, you can't do that. And he says, no, I got to. So he hops over the fence, and his plan is to run, grab the ball, get out the front gate before the beast comes out of its house, but it is chained up. And so he runs in. You saw a bit of that on the clip, and he picks up the ball, and as he's running, the beast comes out and snaps the chain. And, I mean, it's just, he starts chasing him through town, and it's just like a disaster. He comes back. Benny ends up running back to where the Sandlot is, jumps back over the fence into the beast yard, thinking, well, the fence kept him in. It's going to keep him out now, right? Well, the beast hits the fence, knocks out a board, walks through the hole. Now he's got Benny pinned. But then the fence falls over on the beast. And the kids can hear it yelping, and they feel bad, so they kind of dig the beast out. The beast jumps out, lands on one of the kids, and starts licking him. He just slobber everywhere. Like the beast, it's not even named the beast. His name's Hercules. And then amongst all this commotion, the owner of the house is the purportedly grumpy old man named Mr. Myrtle, played by James Earl Jones, so you can imagine Darth Vader's voice. He comes out and he goes, what is all the commotion? And Benny and Smalls are there, and they said, well, they told him the story about the ball, and he looked at them and he goes, why didn't you just knock on my door and ask me? I would have went and got it for you. And so he invites him in, and he says, and they soon discover he's blind, and he says, what's so special about this ball? And he said, well, it's signed by Babe Ruth. And they show the ball, and it's like dripping in slobber. It's got bite marks in it, and there's dirt all over it. I mean, the thing's trashed. And he says, here. And he reaches over, and he grabs another ball. And he says, here, I'll trade you. And they're like, well, this one's signed by Babe Ruth. And he says, so is this one. And the rest of the 1927 Yankees team, which was arguably the best baseball team in history. What a great picture of what Jesus offers us. To trade. I've got something so much better for you. So just let go of what you have and trust me. I know it's not easy. It's easier said than done. But it's all part of the one step at a time, one day at a time process of getting to know Jesus so that we can learn to trust him in all areas of our lives, especially those impossible situations. Really glad that I get to be on this journey with you. Would you pray with me? God, it can be so easy to just be overwhelmed by things going on in our life, whether it's, financial, relational, emotional, health, whatever it happens to be, physical. But we read story after story of how you show up. You're right there with us. You never leave us. It's more a case of us just taking our eyes off of you and trying to figure the thing out ourselves. And you just simply say, just invite me in. Just ask me, because I have something so much better for you. Give us the courage to do that. Just thank you that you're that kind of God that loves us that much. And we pray this in your awesome name. Amen.